Hello, book babes.
Hello, book babies. It's been a little while.
Yeah, I took a little excursion to the United States,
Yeah,
and with my superior knowledge of Christianity that I have gathered over the last 3 weeks, I have now returned to bring down from the mountain the sacred text.
exactly. That was the reason that we sent Phil. We were gonna.
Yeah,
So this week we're doing something. I don't know. Yeah, we've done Nietzsche. We've looked at the no God. But what about real God? I don't know if that makes sense.
I got
Fuck.
you. Um,
We're looking
well,
at the book of Genesis
the
today,
Book of
which
Genesis,
is
or at least the first half. We'll
yes,
see how
yeah,
far we get. Um, yeah, I mean the reason why I was interested in this, and this connects to kind of Jung, which I hope we'll get to at some point, Carl
yeah,
Jung. But it's like, these are the oldest, like most foundational stories that we have in Western civilization, and people say, this is like the Old Testament is like the foundational document of Western civilization,
mm,
and there's probably a reason why certain stories stick around. Whether you want to go from like the Jungian, like there's archetypes that are reproduced, or
yeah,
something else. Yeah, so just figure out what is going on as in these deep texts.
yeah. And of course, the book of Genesis is the first book of the Old Testament, the Christian Bible, and the first book in the Torah as well.
Yeah.
So, and I did a little bit of reading. I probably don't really know enough to say with proper confidence, but there were some similarities found with like the story of creation and some of the stories in Genesis with the Quran as well. This is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Um,
And also the Babylonian like mythology.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we're by no means experts on this shit, and
No,
I'm not really Christian myself. So
no,
like, if any religious scholar will hear this, they're gonna rip us to shreds.
yeah, literally.
But we're just like two novices trying to share our thoughts while reading.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things like approaching this book. In fact, we can't even say this is book boys. This is Bible boys,
It's
right?
Bible boys.
So I again, this is probably going to enrage some theology professor, but I listened to part of this book as like an audiobook, right?
Uh-huh.
And I was googling it. And I was like Genesis audiobook, and all the results were audio Bible, not audiobook.
Wow. Okay.
This is like this is a different breed of
Yeah.
like text, right? And obviously the way that this book is presented, we have every paragraph has a number attached to it, which is attached to each chapter. And it's just every version is designed for this kind of study, which I think is always quite interesting. And
Yeah.
then annotations are just like incredibly deep. In
Yeah.
fact, when I was reading this, I was like, I'm only like, I'm only like 20% through this book at the moment, and then I realized like 60% of that was just annotations.
Yeah. I have
Just
the
pages and pages.
I have the annotated version. It's called Genesis by W.H. Bennett, and annotations are really thorough, to say the least.
Yeah,
It's like one line of text and then the whole page of annotations. But yeah, it's cool. And the first thing I learned from the little intro of this version that I have is that apparently the Pentateuch is, I think how you say it. I don't know, the Torah.
yeah,
Um, it was like functioning as basically law. This was like a law text.
right.
So even though this is, now we look at this as a religious text or as a text of mythology or stories,
Mm.
at the time apparently this was like like examples of how to behave, right?
Right, right,
And
right.
people would read this and extrapolate from this laws, and like this was like a big like government document almost,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So yeah, let's also think about that while we go and see like what kind of rules of behavior we can gather from that.
Cool.
Okay.
It's interesting. Yeah, so we have I think roughly five sections. We have the creation of the world, the creation story, the Eden, and Adam and Eve within that. We have Noah's Ark story and the Tower of Babel. I think that's going to be probably enough to talk about today.
Well,
Yeah, well, firstly, I wanted to ask you, how did you feel? Like, for me, this was quite like, I don't know, unusual experience.
Yeah.
Or like, it was quite a very, very new experience to me. I've never read really tried to read a religious text before.
Yeah.
And I didn't really quite know what to expect. And I don't know, I think it's probably closest to reading Odyssey. Like a book that doesn't really have real authorship, like very clear authorship, and is like really, really fucking old.
Yeah.
And depending on the version you find, can be in quite I don't know. It's as like a narrative and like looking at it as a piece of literature. Like it's written very interestingly. There are some parts which are like I thought were incredibly beautifully written and like just so lovely and so nice. And then there are other parts where it's like, you know, just pages and pages of someone just being like, and he was son of him.
Yeah,
who
yeah.
had 3 brothers called him, and him.
Yeah.
Who had a wife and a dog, and they lived in a small house with him and the nan. And I was it's like, oh,
Yeah. Like the whole family tree, right?
Which has it does have a function, but
yeah, it's interesting to have that in here as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, growing up in Germany, we all get like the kid's Bible, which no kid has ever fucking taken a second look at. Like a little picture book with like one sentence each, like Noah's Ark and the animals. And,
right.
But yeah, it felt in a way really powerful, or like there's like reading this. You know, obviously, I say obviously. At least for me, it does not make sense to approach this text with like a literal kind of interpretive framework, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking at this thinking like, okay, so what about these fundamental stories, you know, are in like, where in these texts can I find some universal truth that lives on to this day, right?
Okay.
What do these stories tell us about our society, or about the way that humans are? And yeah, I could not have read this like as a kid and been like, oh yeah, I get it, you know.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to look at it now that we've read like other philosophers and like go back to the basics, basically.
Yeah, for sure. I think as well, you know, for me, and I'm sure you had a similar thing. I think my kind of generation, we were just at the point where, like the songs we sang in school. I think when I was much younger, maybe it was the school, because I changed school when I was about like 8. But we used to sing a lot of like Christian hymns and stuff in school, and we did used to learn some. We learned like a bunch of like, mainly Old Testament stories, I think. But so Noah's Ark was obviously very familiar to me, and the story of Adam and Eve. But even then, it was, I don't know, it was interesting to revisit that and actually read what, instead of having some, you know, pre-digested kids version of
for
whatever,
sure.
or like some spin-off like Simpsons episode.
Yeah.
To actually read, and be also kind of surprised at how brief they actually are and how small they actually are in the grand scheme of the Bible. And but yeah, how much significance they have. Yeah.
Okay, well, without further ado, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
Yes.
That's our first sentence. And so, you know, Genesis, at least the creation account, apparently there were 2 versions originally.
Yeah.
And I remember actually doing this in high school, but there were 2 versions which the ancient Jews translated into like one version. So there are some inconsistencies within the text, which result from like 2 versions being mixed. So I think in one of them, humans were made before the animals, and the other one, animals were made before the humans and stuff like that. Okay. But we'll mention that when it happens. Okay. So, yes. Second line, and the earth was waste and void. My German is coming through. Waste and wow.
Waste and void.
I'm not wasted. Waste and void. Did I say that right?
Mine says the earth was without form and void.
Ah, okay, interesting.
It's
Okay,
quite a bit nicer.
so annotation in Hebrew, this is tohu wabohu,
Okay.
which I don't. You probably may have heard that phrase.
No, never.
Really? Okay,
never.
okay. It's even in German we have this expression.
Okay.
In German it means to be confused.
Right.
So we use it. So the Hebrew means formlessness and chaos.
Right.
And so, basically at the beginning there was chaos, which is perfect overlap to the Babylonian creation account where Marduk, their god, basically made the world out of chaos. Out of chaos there was order, basically. Interesting note there.
Yeah, and I guess also the whole like creation story is like making making humans, making some form of like making order out of chaos, but originally the chaos was also created by God.
Yes. Yeah. So there's one further step, I guess.
Yeah.
And so also interesting. So the next thing is water. God made water. There was darkness.
Yeah.
Which is water. And I was a little side note. So when I went to the U.S., I went to Griffith Observatory in California, which is a big planetarium. And
well, we went to America.
and they showed this movie about like it just came out like about space exploration and how to find life.
Right.
And the big thing was like when you look for life, you look for water. That's the most basic first step ingredient.
Yeah.
What you were looking for life. So it's kind of interesting that these old texts, which we seem to always perceive like at odds with science, and in some ways obviously they are.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
Like even then in this old text we have water as the first element that gives rise to life.
Yeah,
which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because people obviously walk on land, not water.
Yeah.
And they didn't have the whole satellite pictures back then.
Yeah.
So you would think like if you're like a dude writing this, like it's kind of interesting that even then he would be like, so first we need water for life, right? That's the first step.
Yeah.
Which is not what I would have thought if I was writing this.
Well, it makes sense, like especially if you want to settle in an area, why would you settle anywhere that doesn't you would kill yourself if you did that.
Yeah.
And I think I know what you're saying for sure. It's like there is that I think that's one of the things that's interesting about this book is like trying to find these things that make sense today or seem to be things that we can either prove or things that we can kind of rely on strongly through thinking through them, especially when it comes to like conduct between people, which is what a lot of this book is about. Why is it good to be trustworthy, for example? We can probably rationally explain that now, but maybe the same logic wouldn't have applied back then when this book was being written. Yeah. Or maybe a kind of deeper kind of logic was being applied. Yeah. So what does God do next?
God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Okay, so this is obviously a big thing. The speech of God, the word of God, calls forth existence itself. So the postmodernists would be all over this in an interesting way, right?
Okay.
Because the whole framework would be, there's nothing outside the text.
Oh, sure, right.
So, like, obviously, postmodernists don't like religion, at least traditionally. But there's an interesting overlap here where we have the word is everything, right?
Yes, God says, "Let there be light," and
then light appears. Right?
It's as if light is something that already exists and is called light before that. Yeah,
it's not like they could have just said God made light.
Yeah,
God doesn't make light. He speaks light into existence. And I guess this, man being made in the image of God, this has the implication, I guess, that, speech or, words are what brings forth existence itself. So
speech brings forth existence. Would that not be a like pro postmodernist?
yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
which is interesting. Right?
Yeah. And also the whole like we'll get to it, but talking about when humans finally have that. Oh shit! When humans finally have that, they're kind of given that role of naming things.
Yeah, naming the animals. Yeah,
From,
yeah.
Which is an originally well, here it's like this is what God does. Yeah, and then God saw that the light was good. This is like obviously this is also another fundamental thing, right? God is good, right? And like what God creates is good, and all of these things that He creates, whether it's like whether it's the light, or whether it's like the animals or the vegetation, whatever, they're all described as good things, right? The oceans are all good.
Yeah. So this is kind of going back to a philosophy, like a discussion we had about Nietzsche or about philosophy in general. Or I guess what was the fucking depressing French thing that we read?
Oh,
Sisyphus.
Yeah, Myth of Sisyphus. Yeah.
Basically to say that the first preconception to any philosophical framework is that existence is good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what we came to basically say.
And like utilitarianism as well, right?
Yeah. Like you can't have any kind of ethical or moral framework if you don't believe that existence itself is good, right?
Yeah.
Which is exactly what we have here.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah. So
and
about
it also sets us up for the fall later on as well.
Yes.
With Adam and Eve.
So a quick footnote on the idea of light. So in my version it says light. Merodach or Marduk, the creator, according to the Babylonians of heaven and earth, was a solar deity, and his appearance is often interpreted as the appearance of light at the beginning of creation. Right. So there is no, as far as I know, there's no like conclusive proof that the Torah was inspired by older Babylonian stories.
Right.
But I think a lot of people believe that, like a lot of researchers would stake their career on that.
Sure.
And there are things that point toward that chaos at the beginning and then light, being created. So, okay. God called the light day, and the darkness He called night.
And there was evening and there was morning, the first day.
Oh, it says the first day for yours?
Yeah.
Okay, for mine it says one day, and I have a footnote on this, why it's not the first day. Great.
Interesting.
Awesome. Okay, so let's ignore that.
Well, we can go into it if you want.
So it says for mine, it says one day, not first day, as second, third, etc. of the following paragraphs. Perhaps because the author wishes to emphasize the fact that evening and morning made a day, or one day, may just be an equivalent for the first day in Genesis, blah blah blah. Okay, and then goes on about like the ancient Jews like counted a day, beginning in the evening, like going to the morning. So
right.
Well, now we think of a day like it starts in the morning and then goes on to the next morning, right?
Yeah.
But at that time, you would think like evening is the beginning of one day.
Cool. So funky.
Okay, yeah, the sixth paragraph. This was kind of like some geometrical, mind-blowing stuff going on here. We have a firmament.
Okay.
At my text it's called a firmament. I don't know in yours. A firmament in the midst of the waters. Let it divide the waters from the waters. So he's pulling heaven out of earth based on a firmament, which just means like a solid something.
It's just as separated in my text.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Hang on, let's see. Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. Or a canopy.
Yeah.
That's what my footnote says.
Yeah, there's lots of translations, and I have a lot of annotations about the original Hebrew here, but yeah. anyway, he basically pulled heaven out of earth, and there's also water in heaven. That's what we learned from this.
Right.
Okay, second day and so on. Anything you want to note?
About the second day,
or just from here. So the next thing we have is the first life that springs is grass, right?
Yeah.
Grass, plants, herbs, bearing fruit, and then we have the animals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess not the stars.
I guess one thing, we're talking about the waters, right?
Yeah.
So like Earth starts, we assume as this like this mass of water, and then slowly, like essentially drains down, and we have this land appearing, and I think this is interesting. Like one because that's what happens in Noah's Ark, right? The whole Earth is basically submerged again.
Yeah.
As if it's like another point in the creation story, but also as well talking about like this ancient like intuition of thinking about the world, and I do wonder whether to what extent people were aware of how how sea levels changed, and whether they had some kind of like cognition of that back then.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you could probably I don't know, think about these things, looking at the way like erosion and stuff in certain areas, and like even just the way that certain areas look like they looking like basins surrounded by mountains and things, and so yeah, it makes me wonder to what extent like people were aware of that, and I don't know if there's any scholarship on that, but yeah, it's just something I thought about.
I mean, you have to wonder how much like writings there were back then that were just all lost, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So yeah, you said so the next thing God did after creating the water and the dry land, he created the vegetation, as you said.
Vegetation, and we have the stars. Okay, so what's really interesting on the fifth day, passage 20 here, and God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life." Isn't that interesting?
The moving creature.
The waters are bringing forth the moving creature, right?
Yeah.
Hello, evolution.
Yeah, literally.
Like creatures coming out of the water. Like
yeah.
This is. I wonder why. Like what? Yeah, I guess you said like if you want to build a city, you would choose somewhere where there's water, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's quite interesting how there's like there seems to be quite a like big consciousness of that water is the origin of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. It also says, let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the heavens, and and it's like we have evolution, but no, God creates them all.
Okay, he makes whales. Or sea monsters.
And I guess one of the other interesting things as well is the separation of like animals. We have like the livestock, right? And the creeping things, and it says here, and God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock and creeping things and beasts of the earth according to their kinds," and it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creeps on the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So we have like again this like this God creates these things and also names these things, and like categorizes them, and it's like, why is this why is this happening? Like, why on what basis is, like, when you name something, why do you name it that?
Yeah.
And like when you decide that it's got these certain characteristics, it's like, why? And it's a kind of, I don't know, it seems like it's like he's creating the limits of what we could perceive in things. Like we can never like categorize animals in ways that God hasn't done for us already, right? It seems to be like the implication.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of a first attempt at like biology, I guess, here, right? Trying to categorize animals and so on.
Yeah. And you can see this is very functional. Like it's like livestock animals, like creeping animals, probably the ones that you will want to stay away from, right?
Okay. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." Okay, so two things. Man is made in God's image, and man rules over the earth and all its creatures. So get wrecked, vegans.
Yeah, exactly, yes. It actually says that.
Yeah, it says right here.
The following line, yeah.
It says right here, it's really cool that Paul McCartney is a vegetarian, but honestly, it's kind of stupid.
So, humans are, again, they don't belong to this animal category, like, per se. And they have dominion over Earth. And this is kind of like, so what we have here is this, like, this being, this living thing, which is different to the soil of the earth and different to everything, even the animals that live on the earth, but it also has this like godlike quality. So this like contrast between these divine and, I guess, earthly qualities in humans. Yeah. And I feel like that's pretty significant to the whole thing, right? And it's also, God makes them, and so these humans are good, right?
Yeah, and so also interesting, because we have Eve being created out of Adam, but before that here it says, and God created man in his own image, in the image of God he created him, male and female. Created he them.
Does it say he them in yours?
Yeah.
Oh, created he them.
Yeah, so
right.
he, God.
He created them.
But there's very clear, like, there's male and female, right?
Yeah.
And it's like two things kind of mentioned in like an equal framework. Whereas, later we have and this is probably the two creations accounts mixing here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But, we have kind of an equal understanding of sex in this account.
Yeah.
Whereas in the later part, some people would say that, oh well, Eve is made out of Adam, so therefore Adam is better than Eve. Or something
yeah, for sure. And it's I think the Hebrew words are Isha for woman, right? And Ish for male, for female and male. So yeah, it's interesting. It's like God created man in his own image. And he made man male and female.
Yeah. No, well, this is the fun. It's okay. We have all this, like, we shouldn't call it something man.
I'm not talking about man as a signal for gender, but what I'm saying is, it's hard. We can't tell from this translation whether the word man is supposed to be ish here, as in the
no. I think it's different. I think it's something close to like Adam, actually. So for me it says man, Hebrew, Adam.
Ah, okay, right.
Here a common noun of uncertain derivation, but by similarity of form suggesting the name Edom. The word Adama, ground. So interesting. Ground, right? He makes, this is later, but he makes Adam out of the earth, out of the ground, and putting his breath into him.
Yeah, breathes into him.
So the word man itself comes from the word ground.
Yeah.
Cool.
So maybe it's a better way of reading the word man would maybe be human.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's my point with all this like gender stuff. It's like we shouldn't call it man, we should call it woman. Well, man is just short for human.
Sure.
Like there's no really in the original Hebrew, there is no gendered notion at all to this word man. Okay.
And I think it's easy to make that misunderstanding because if you have ish and isha, like isha comes from ish, woman comes from man, and the word's woman, right? Whoa man.
Yeah.
It's
Whoa man.
Whoa man, we're getting deep on this.
You don't want to test me right now.
But no, I think that's a really important distinction to make. So it's a really important thing to like bear in mind. I think when you're reading this.
Okay, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply." Okay, so the direct impetus, like, more life is good. Right? Having children is good. Okay.
Yeah, and the whole idea of this this earth that they live on is like it's abundant with vegetation and animals and nature and just this burgeoning like beautiful place, right?
Yeah. Which is in I'm gonna get cancelled. So in modern times we have the incels and the environmentalists making alliances against the production of children. But obviously in the Christian framework, having children is good, objectively good. And if you look at kind of population data in the US especially, you will find that Christian households have way more children.
Oh God, yeah.
And Mormons and so on. Okay.
It's like 13 kids. That's the thing.
Okay.
I guess it's all, but it is interesting though because it's not necessarily just a case of having more life, but there do seem to be some constraints that are like written in Genesis, like having like more than one wife is like I can't remember which story it is.
It'll come up later. Yeah, some guy has 2 wives.
Yeah, and that's like very much like slow down, cowboy.
Okay.
But yeah, so we get to a point now where we have humans and they are given free reign to this place, and they have this special role where they are almost like the shepherds of this place. They take care of it, and they given this role where they have a foot in both worlds, in this kind of heavenly, godlike quality and this very human or very like earth-like animal quality.
And another parallel, I guess, to the Babylonians as well, at the end of this creation account for the Babylon, also in the hymn to Murdoch, it's said that Murdoch makes mankind, basically.
So the very last sentence before we get to the 7th day, which is section, or how do we say, line 31?
Yeah.
And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And
very good.
And there was evening, and there was morning, the 6th day.
So you could say that maybe what makes it very good, not just good, is the fact that there is humans, but I think it's more like the whole picture, right? The grand picture. Everything is like put together now.
Yeah. This is the state from which we define good. This is like almost the utopian thing, right? And then we have the 7th day. So Genesis chapter 2 starts with the 7th day where God rests. So it starts with, "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation."
Yeah, I mean, this is where we get the 7-day work week. This is where we get, you know, Sundays off. This is where we get, you know, the Jews resting on what is it? Shabbat? No. I'm such a moron.
Yeah, no, me too.
What is it called? You know, the Jews not working on that 7th day.
The Sabbath.
Sabbath, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, in my version it says God hallowed it, so you know he made it kind of a sacred day.
Yeah.
On which even God rests. Okay.
Yeah, make it holy.
Cool.
What did you do on Sunday yesterday?
I was reading Genesis.
Oh right,
wow.
Like a good,
a little bit.
Yeah,
like a good Christian.
Good Christian. So we finished most of the creation now.
Yes.
This section is called the creation of man and woman, according to my text.
Okay. Well, just before that, I have a annotation in my book pointing towards the primitive narrative of the creation, which is apparently like a base text.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Hebrew that this creation account was like forged out of. So this creation account was like made, you know,
yes,
combining different texts. But the primitive narrative of the creation, it's like first line. The primeval chaos. I don't know how to say that.
Primeval chaos. Right?
Primeval chaos. Next line. A man formed from the soil and the breath of God.
Mm-hmm.
Next line. Yahweh Elohim. The name for God in Hebrew.
Right.
Yahweh Elohim.
Yeah.
Plants a garden with trees and provides it with rivers. Next line. Yahweh Elohim places the man in the garden. So, and then it goes on, right? So the pace here is even more condensed, right?
Right.
So it gives you a perspective of how these texts evolved over time, right?
Interesting.
Like this whole creation account is like in the original primitive narrative. It's like one sentence.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe it should have been one sentence, because it's, you know, the seventh day. It's like, on the seventh day, God finished his work, and he rested because he did all the work that he did.
Yeah.
Which was why he rested.
Yeah.
And then he called this day, which is the day that he rested, because he did all the work, so he needed a rest. The seventh day, and it was holy because he had to rest from all the work that he did the days before.
All right, you're gonna slap, mate.
Gonna look at the Spotify fucking statistics and see that the listenership dropped out specifically at this moment.
Okay, so going on, we have some contradictions already starting. So it says, the Lord God made earth and heaven, and no plant of the field was yet in the earth, and no herb of the field had yet sprung up. For the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. Yeah, so earlier we said, you know, we have plants, and now we don't have plants.
Yeah.
Which is
Get
like
fucked.
the two creation accounts. Okay,
and we also have no people, right?
Yeah.
So God, he hasn't caused it to rain, which is the reason why. So we just got gaslit. And then, but this is also the point where we get the more, I guess, like popularly known description of like humans being created. And he says, the Lord God formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living creature. And then the Lord planted a garden in Eden, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, so, I mean, as we said earlier, interesting, first of all, the man is made out of the earth, made out of dust from the ground. which we have kind of a approximation of like organic chemistry, right? Man made from Earth returns back to the Earth at some point, right?
Yeah.
Very like biosphere.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's a good point.
Breathed into his nostrils. So obviously, like breath, something that's breathing is alive, right? Breath is life. Okay.
Yeah. And also, it's I guess the idea of having it's a reaction between two things. It's not just dust by itself forming into something, but it has to like the idea of like of getting pregnant, for example, like this combination of two elements, these two things coming together and like creating something that can't be undone. Or like when you cook, for example, like you do these why are you laughing?
Did you see that movie, The Menu?
Oh, I did, yeah.
Oh, it was good.
Yeah, it was alright. But
sorry.
What the whole, when you cook, you do something which cannot be reversed. Right? You there is a reaction that can't be reversed, and it's the same here, right? It's maybe humans can go back to the Earth, but it's like the thing that you have when you have a human that is living is this like this kind of what is a human is something that's living, which comes from the dust.
And also the separation here is the animals and so on and plants, their life came out of water. Whereas the life of man came from God himself, which is again this man made in God's image and like different in a way, right? It almost when we now think of things as artificial or natural, right? You could say from like an extreme evolutionary account, well, cities are natural because humans are evolved from whatever apes, and now they make cities. So cities are a part of nature just as everything else. But here we would say, well, there's nature, which life came out of water, and then there's man, which was quote unquote artificially put into nature.
And also came after this whole thing was created. Humans came after animals. After animals were already, spoken into existence and given this name. And
at least in this account.
And also they how do I say? Yeah, like you said, they came out of the water. Animals came out of the water, but humans came out of the earth, which did not originally exist, or came after the water, right, in itself. And I think in a way that probably describes that. How would you describe how you feel you are different to animals without a scientific basis, or without having like some the like philosophical foundation that we like live within our own societies, right? I imagine it would be very strange. Like you would, I don't know, there seems to be this, it does seem to be a kind of natural like sense that there's something different.
Like justify why you can kill a cow but not a human.
Although I think there would be many people that would contest.
I didn't want to say it. But
I don't know. I don't know where I really stand on it, but I think it's very clear in this book what the message is.
Yes.
So we have the creation of the Garden of Eden, where the humans are put, and it's a very beautiful place. It's got all these nice trees and all these nice foods and stuff. And then within the Garden of Eden, we have the Tree of Life,
which I know under the name of something like Yggdrasil.
Yggdrasil, okay.
Which is not actually mentioned in this version, which I was surprised. But I think that's some derivation of the original Hebrew.
Okay.
And one small note as well. The Lord God planted a garden. a very anthropomorphic phrase here, right? God didn't speak it into existence. Like the garden was planted, like very, kind of behind the scenes. Hello, human is writing this. Like,
Sure.
the garden was planted.
And also as well, it's, these humans were made, and they were made to be the people that tended the land, but it was God that created it for them.
Yeah.
Right? And also after he created humans, if we're like really specifically looking at the order in which this is written. But yeah, anyway, we have the tree of life, and we have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is the one that we will probably talk about quite a lot. This is the tree in which the snake lives. The snake which tempted Eve to eat the forbidden fruit and forever be banished from the Garden of Eden.
Okay, before that, we have the rivers. This was kind of like, because I never heard of this with the rivers. This is kind of crazy. No. And a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became 4 heads. The name of the first is Pishon, blah, 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 and then the next one is, which it goes to the land of Havilah, where there is gold, and the gold of that land is good. And there is bdellium and the onyx stone. In my version, it also says like bdellium is like not a thing. No one knows what it means.
Really?
Yeah, it's not like
unobtainium.
Yeah. Don't mind the diamonds before you get obsidian, so you can't enchant them. Yeah, so we have these 4 rivers with their own names. And, people have, like, tried to piece together which river is what in actual geography.
That's cool. All right.
And probably... Which one is this? Gihon. The river Gihon is probably...
It's the second river, yeah.
Which one? Oh, too many notes. One of them is probably the Nile.
Right.
And, yeah. Anyway.
So we have the Pishon River, the Gihon River, the Tigris River, and the Euphrates River. Yeah.
Yeah, so it says, Gihon. Taken as a Hebrew word, the name might mean bursting through. A corresponding word, Jehun, is still used as the name or title of Armenian and Indian rivers. But as this river is defined as compassing the whole land of Kush, and Kush is usually Ethiopia, the Gihon is probably the Nile.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but it's like, basically it's really hard to try to fit these rivers onto anything. But what is interesting is that we have, the description is the river starts somewhere, probably in heaven, goes through Eden, and then like parts into 4 rivers, right?
Right.
So we have this really interesting geometrical, image of the whole thing, earth and heaven and everything, where there's like somehow there's a river flowing through everything. Right?
Yeah. Again, it's this idea like that a living place needs to have water, and needs to be running water. Needs to have, we put cities on these places. This is where life comes out from.
Okay, and the Lord said, you may eat all the fruit, but not the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Expertly read.
Thou shalt not eat of it. Jesus.
So he says, you may surely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die. So this is quite interesting to me, because we've already established that all of these things are good, and man's good, Eden's good, it's all good.
Yeah.
and then we have the knowledge of good and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, is also created by God. So we must also assume that it's something that's good, right? But for some reason we can't touch this. And like, I don't know, we probably don't have time to really go that deeply into this, but there's a big question of like, why does this thing exist?
Yeah.
Like, what is, and because we know where this leads. For what reason are we not allowed to know, have this knowledge of good and evil? Is it, and what were the motives of God in doing this? Was it out of fear that humans would, because the idea of the knowledge of good and evil is something that God has, right? Something that God embodies. And did God think that if humans had knowledge of good and evil, then they would be able to, displace God? Was he worried about his position? Was it like, some kind of test in some other way? I don't know. It's like interesting to think about.
And it ties into also the distinction between, I guess, animals and humans, or nature and man again. Where we, like, if you imagine like the circle of life and like a lion eating of whatever they eat, like gazelle, I don't know. You wouldn't say the lion is evil, right?
Yeah.
It's quote unquote in his nature.
Sure.
But the implication here is that, man, we're skipping ahead a bit, but man eventually becomes aware of good and evil. And so, I think the unspoken implication is that, there are certain things, instincts, whether this be sexual or, greed or whatever, like, for humans are different than animals, and for humans you can't just follow your quote unquote natural instincts without it like being, oh, I'm just following my instincts, man, it's nature. No. There is a moral implication for that, and there are things that are good and there are things that are evil, and you could say, okay, this is like a debate, like pedophiles, right? You're born as a pedophile, so now it's in your nature to whatever, be attracted to children. So, and you could imagine some people might say, well, it's not their fault, and so on. Whereas the Christian perspective would be, well, following your natural instincts, following the kind of tribal desires. That's not how it works for humans, right? There are like,
so even if you could say that it's that someone is born, like a pedophile, or someone is born to use maybe a less controversial example, an alcoholic or something, it still wouldn't excuse the behavior.
Well, the big point today for a lot of Catholics is homosexuality, right? So what some like very Christian conservatives would say, we accept homosexuals, and we don't think they're any worse or anything, but the act is still immoral. And the justification would be that, even though you may be born this way, or it be natural for you to desire sex with someone of the same sex, we're operating within a moral framework,
which is,
even though it's natural, it's not good. You can't just follow your natural desires. And it goes for men having a sexual drive. I fucking hate this shit in Japan. People are always like, but the seiryoku is so takai for men, so they have to go to the prostitution.
Do you want to translate that?
It's like, if you speak to enough people in Japan, like, eventually someone will mention the fact that men have a very strong sex drive, which is true. But because of that, they would justify things like cheating on their wife, or going to prostitution is different than cheating because I'm just relieving my sex drive and that keeps our marriage together, shit like that, right? Whereas the Christian perspective would be like very much, but you can't just follow your natural drive. because there is a moral framework here. You're not an animal, right?
Yeah, I think I agree to that to different like extents. I think sometimes how do I form this? I feel like you can arrive at a lot of these. You can arrive at certain conclusions without necessarily having to revert to like a Christian interpretation. So, for example, homosexuality, I don't think whilst I can see that with like cheating on your partner or that's obviously wrong. I don't think that I find it very, very hard to agree with any kind of idea that like you should necessarily suppress your sexuality for some other for some purpose, even if it is the case of like I don't know, it's
Okay, well, to preface this. This is not my view.
I know that's not your view.
No.
Yeah, and we should probably like
but like
make that clear. But
this is not my view. But what someone holding that view might say, or an argument that often comes up, is where do you draw the line? Because if we go to pedophiles, it's like, well, why should they suppress their sexuality?
Well, I think that there's a big difference, like in terms of consent. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Like,
that's what I would say.
There are lots of like. But just talking specifically about this example, it's like I had something I want to say on this. It's like one thing I find a little bit like patronizing sometimes is like the idea. It's like I love you and accept you for who you are. I accept you as a human being. It's not even a but necessarily. Yeah. It's like I hope you can stop doing this. Kind of thing. It's like. So
I mean, it is patronizing in the sense of the word.
Or I guess the main point is that it's like there's some element of like I don't want to be disrespectful by any means, but like it can sometimes come across like when someone I know maybe this is not a problem with like Christianity itself, but more maybe a problem with certain people who have certain ideas about what it is. But like when someone will say like they don't necessarily look at you as a human being, but rather as someone to be saved or something. And I notice that especially with things like homosexuality. It's like it's almost like the idea is like there's like a human underneath it. If you just like suppressed your gay urges or whatever, you would be like a good Christian or whatever.
Right. No, okay, I get what you're saying. Big tangent. That
was good though. I enjoyed good discussion.
Okay, so and the Lord said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an help meet for him." This is, I don't know what the fuck the grammar in my book. I will make him an help for him. An
help, right? Yeah. Okay.
And out of the ground the Lord formed every beast of the field. Again, now the animals are made after the humans, but the animals this two creation accounts fighting with each other. And every fowl of the air brought them blah blah blah. Unto the man to see what he would call them. And whatsoever the man called every living creature, that was the name thereof.
Yeah.
And the man gave names to all cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for man there was not found an help meet for him. I don't know what the fuck. Okay, you said this earlier. A really good observation. Similar to God speaking the world into creation, man is naming the beasts, and that is then what they are.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's like God does these things, and then he's like, it's like hand on Adam's shoulder, like, you try it.
Yeah.
And so we find out through Adam is doing these things. But there was not found a helper fit for Adam. So we have all these living creatures, but they don't quite do it. And again, I think this probably speaks to this like distinction between animals and humans. It's like, maybe you can, you have a good relationship with your cat, but like, could you call your cat your best friend? Probably not, right? You can't help, your cat is not going to help you do the dishes.
You can have a really good relationship with your cat.
You can do anything.
Hashtag Shane Dawson.
Hashtag God is dead. So anyway, we come to this realization, and then God puts Adam to sleep, takes one of his ribs, closes up the flesh, and from this rib he makes a woman and brings her to the man Adam.
This sounds as pleasant as the McRib tastes, by the way.
McRib.
Fucking disgusting. Anyway.
Oh, you went to America, didn't you?
I know. Okay. Big thing here, again. First creation account, God makes male and female. Second creation account, woman is made out of the rib, right?
Yes. Yeah. And also as well, we have this quote. So Adam then says, then the man said, "This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man." This is something that Adam says.
Yeah.
Adam names Eve. Adam creates woman by naming it. But before, it was God that created both man and woman. Right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, big difference. Yeah.
And
okay, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Okay, so we have the idea of like, at some point you leave your parents' house and you get married, and then now you're going to be one unit, basically. Nuclear family right here. Read the footnote, libs.
Jesus Christ. That actually reminds me. I was reading about like the nuclear family, and really specifically about like different living arrangements throughout history. And like one of the like with like anarchy, one of the main like objectives is to neutralize hierarchies, right? And one of them being like family hierarchies. And as an example, I was speaking to this person about this, and they were saying how there's this I'm making way too much of this, but there's this idea of it takes a village to raise a child, and like the whole anarchist commune thing, like everyone lives in like a forest and whatever, and raises each other and whatever. And often like the fact of people living in communal like groups in the past is used as like a justification for why it should be in place now.
Yeah.
And whilst I don't disagree with that at all, actually, I think like community is a really good thing. It is also like there is also this whole story, right? This like you have your family, you have your descendants, you have your family and your clan, and when you get your wife, you leave home and whatever. So yeah, but basically the lesson is to take from this, at least from my perspective, is that fucking what is it, like appeal to nature fallacy, I guess. Maybe not appeal to nature, but like these things are, it's like, oh, it happened in the past,
right? So therefore it's
fine now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, it's like, it happened in the past, but also this thing that was the complete opposite also happened in the past. So what do we do now?
Yeah, I don't see this. In my version, it doesn't have any note on this, but it says, "Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife."
Yeah, it said hold fast to his wife on that.
Okay, what I want to stress is that it says wife, not woman. Yeah. So there's an implication, and they shall become one flesh. So there is an idea that, they shall become one flesh. So we have wife, we have marriage, then we have child, and this is one unit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I don't know what the original Hebrew here is, but I don't think it's an accident that it says wife and not woman.
No, for sure. I think that.
And this is also kind of a, not to like dunk on the Mormons, but
yeah,
like one man, one wife. This is good, right?
Yeah. And I mean, throughout the rest of this Genesis, there is like the marriage plays a big role in a lot of the in so many of the stories.
Yeah.
Whether it's like someone not being able to do something because they're married, not being able to do something because they're not married, or having, and just the importance of these relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Not just being hold fast to his woman or hold fast to a woman. It's hold fast to his wife. It's like, yeah, for sure.
Okay. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord had made. And he said unto the woman, Yeah, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of any tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, Of the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. Okay, I have a lot of notes in my book on the snake, or the serpent rather. So later we have the serpent kind of as Satan, which is not really in this text. It's kind of a later interpretation, but apparently the ancient Jews and Babylonians did not like snakes. It's kind of natural enemy of man, right? Venomous and so on, but also apparently was believed for a long time that snakes eat dust.
Really?
Yeah, and this is later when they're banished, right? It's like the snake has no legs, so that's the punishment of the snake, that it has no legs and it shall like eat shit basically, be on the ground and eat dust.
Yeah, and that is what happens, right? When they get banished.
Yeah.
And maybe you could think about dust as like children, like
Earth man,
like primordial humans.
That's deep.
Dust is babies. Yeah, I think the like you said, you could look at the like evolutionary biology perspective thing from here, and be like, yeah, humans have always feared snakes and whatever. And that could be one of the reasons why this is why it's a snake, but it could also just be, I don't know. There's it often is kind of tempting to apply to try and figure it out and to try and be like, oh, this is this because of this. It makes perfect sense. But then you go a couple more pages and there's something completely incomprehensible and you don't understand the logic of it at all.
Yeah, I feel like that sometimes.
At least definitely today when I think we've definitely have a way of understanding snakes as this sort of sneaky, crafty, and very dangerous thing.
And it's interesting to think about how much of that is informed by this cultural literature, and how much of it would be a natural property of humans, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Like if you take humans and put them on an island, would they also end up vilifying snakes?
Exactly, yeah. No, I won't go into more tangents. We need to.
Okay. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as God, knowing good and evil.
Mm-hmm. And this is kind of true, right? You won't die.
Well,
right. This is okay. There's a distinction to make. Like, we don't know if Adam and Eve are mortal, really, right?
no, I think. Okay. Well, let's talk about it when it happens. But
it seems like, and maybe this is a translation thing, but like, you will not surely die. It's like the idea is the apple is almost like it's poison or something, and it will kill you. It will literally kill you when you eat it.
Well, okay. First of all, interesting note here. Because of art and whatever, and the fucking Italians paintings, we now think of it as an apple, but really, it's some undefined fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But okay. So we all know Eve takes the fruit and gives it and eats it and gives it to Adam, and he also eats it.
Mm-hmm.
And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons.
Yeah.
Big
moves happening.
Big moves happening.
So, yeah, they were naked before and they weren't ashamed, and now they are.
Why?
I don't know.
Why does making so now you know the difference between good and evil? Why are you now ashamed that you're naked?
I think maybe one of the it's like maybe suggests a lack of trust between each other.
I mean trust, and also it seems like basically if you're naked, you're vulnerable. And like knowing good and evil, it's like, knowing like if to kill someone is bad and these kind of things, right? So how to hurt someone.
Yeah.
So kind of knowing good and evil means you know that if someone were to hurt you or see you naked, that would make you feel bad. So then like looking at someone else, you're like, okay, I know how to hurt this person.
Yeah.
Or I know that like like it's almost like the reason why they're ashamed is because like looking at someone naked makes you realize vulnerabilities, and vulnerabilities tell you how to hurt someone.
Sure.
That could be one interpretation.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a specifically like sex related.
Also
because it seems significant that their loincloths, we're assuming they're covering their like genitals. And when I read this, I thought this was kind of like the implication was that now that they were aware of evil, they were aware that like they could rape or be raped.
Yeah, I think that's certainly part of it, because if you think of children are innocent.
Yeah.
Children run around naked.
Yeah.
But at some point something changes, puberty, and then it's not cool to be naked anymore all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's true.
And maybe that's kind of the inspiration why they chose to phrase it like
the
that.
way you wrote it. It's not cool to be naked anymore. That's actually a really good way of putting when you're young, you just don't give a when you're like a little baby, you don't give a shit. And then like, I should start covering up more.
Yeah. Well, and that's like pretty like parallel too, like knowing what is good and evil, right? Like at some point you become aware of morality.
And I would say it's probably more in this parallel of like children. I don't know how things would be if we didn't have parents dressing us, parents like saying you can't get your willy out in the nursery.
Yeah.
As a child.
Yeah.
It's like,
I've been told that many times. Sir, this is a Wendy's.
You almost got your passport taken off you in America. but yeah, for sure. It's hard to say, but I think there is, maybe there is some kind of like. Again, though, how much of that idea is culturally informed through the Bible, and how much of it is actually because there's obviously like this is one pretty, even though it's very influential, it's in one corner of the world, right?
But I think if you put people on an island, like they would eventually, even if the temperature is perfect so that you wouldn't need any clothes, I think they would eventually start to dress, simply because adults seeing each other naked, there's, especially males, right, there's some males seeing females, there's some reaction to that, right? And so like even if you have no sense of culture, religion, anything, like let's say there's a man and a woman who are having a child or whatever, and now they're a family, and now like some other dude sees your wife naked, or we don't have to say wife because I guess we have no culture, so we could say sees the mother of your child naked. As a man, you're like, no, this is not. Cover it up.
It's where there's a potential to be attracted to someone, there is a potential for danger. There's a potential to get violated by someone else.
And that is the difference between good and evil, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so God's voice is like, where are you guys?
The omniscient, omnipresent God was looking for them in the garden, and they managed to hide from him somehow. But I'm okay with this. I can live with this.
Keep reading.
So they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. And God called out to them. And Adam says, is Adam says, or is it? Adam says, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. And God responds, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree of which I command you not to eat? So this is another thing, like the idea of being naked. This like goes back to what we were just talking about. A child has probably very little idea of what being naked means, outside of what they learn from what their parents teach them, and being chaste, or what's the word, like being feeling embarrassed or ashamed about being naked.
And God is kind of testing Adam in a way here by asking him, like, did you do this thing that I know you did?
And
I was like, no.
And I think that's also why God quote unquote looks for them, because it's like God probably, I'm sure God already knew where they were, right? But he pretends that he's looking for them, maybe. And earlier we had the importance of the word. The word creates, speech. Very important. Now we have this idea that, okay, man, basically you lie to God, right? Like speaking, being dishonest, lying is like a cardinal sin, almost as bad as eating the from the tree itself. Right. It's like, well, not only did you fuck up, but now you're also lying about it. And on top of lying as well, it's not that he just says I didn't eat it. He says, wait, hang on. The woman who blah blah blah. So he does admit that he ate the apple, the fruit, sorry. But the way that he says it is not like a very honest way of saying it. So God asks, have you eaten it? And the man said, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me fruit of the tree and I ate. So immediately it's like
I didn't do it.
It was the person you gave me who gave me the fruit that I ate. So he throws both God and Eve under the bus
Yeah.
in one sentence.
Yeah. And in this sense, this is kind of this appeal to nature fallacy almost, where we say, well, what I did, you say what I did is evil, is a sin. Well, I just did what's natural, right? This is the natural course that you put me on.
Sure. Yeah, you created this thing which ended up leading me to betray you.
Yeah, you created me, with this anger inside my soul. You created me as a pedophile. You created me as an evil person. So therefore, I had to kill the children.
Yeah. Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back.
Younglings.
No, Empire Strikes
Okay.
Back. The younglings.
And Eve is like, well, the snake told me, the serpent.
So the serpent deceived me and I ate it, which is another, deflection. And again, it's the serpent that God created. And this is if this is a test from God, this is exactly what He doesn't want to hear.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like if God did this, He's like, I know everything I've made is good because I am God.
Yeah.
So they can't use these excuses on me.
Yeah, and later. In later Old Testament stories with Job and so on, there is a big emphasis on responsibility in the old Jewish texts, and all what we have here is like, it's not, I didn't do it, not my responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the snake is blamed, and God is like, because thou hast done this, cursed art thou above all cattle and above every beast of the field. This is him talking to the snake. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. Yeah. That serpents ate dust was a widespread belief amongst the ancients, deduced no doubt from the constant proximity of the serpent's head to the dust. It is implied that before the fall, the serpent did not crawl upon its belly and lived upon something else other than dust. So this is maybe why we have in the old Italian paintings.
Yes.
Serpent is in the tree.
Yes, exactly. It's always commonly in the tree, right? I think it's interesting that the serpent would be punished as well. Because it feels like one of the reasons that this happened was because the humans had some kind of they weren't animal enough to just simply live and exist in the world and function as they were made to by God.
Yeah.
As a livestock animal or as a creepy crawly or whatever. They were given something which allows them to have the free will to eat or not eat this fruit.
Yeah.
Right? And then the snake seems to be not quite just a normal animal, right? Obviously it talks to them, which is kind of sus, but it's something that's punishable as well. And you can't punish an animal, can you? Or can an animal betray you? And the animal here appears to betray God, but maybe this is just like a show,
Yeah.
Maybe this is God putting on a show.
Testing people.
Or just no, I'm not test. I don't mean the test.
Oh,
I mean maybe he's putting on a show by punishing the serpent in front of them.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. I mean, God can do whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah.
But and he doesn't need to be fair, quote unquote, fair to the animals. But yeah, it seems like the serpent is almost on the same level as human, in that they
the way it acts. It's smarter and
exactly.
And also, if knowing the difference between good and evil is what makes you godlike, the snake seems to know it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And interesting note as well, later interpretations, I think very Catholic as well, is that the serpent is the devil.
Yeah.
This doesn't seem to be supported by this text, at least, because we have also Lucifer falling, and Lucifer is Satan.
Yeah.
But if you think God punishing the snake, crawl on your belly and you eat dust, Like, this is not how God would approach the devil, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, what do we have next? So after delivering this punishment to the snake, the God says to the woman, "I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you." And then to Adam he said, "Because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field by the sweat of your face. You shall eat bread till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. For you are dust, and to dust you shall return." This shit is so beautiful and really, really mean. Your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you is just like crushing, like, yeah, that's rough.
and this is like traditional gender roles, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But really, what we have here is a framing that the male desire, sexual male desire, is bad. It's punishment for the woman, and also like it's like
right.
We're not like again with this appeal to nature. It's not that like, men want to fuck and it's just natural. And it's like, no, this is bad.
Yeah,
this is a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not a boys will be boys.
Yeah, like
excuse, right?
You shall multiply. That's good. You shall have a wife. That's good. But male desire, contrary to the woman, that's bad. That's
Yeah.
So you could say, oh yeah, but God made it so that man rules over the okay, difference in strength, whatever. But
sure.
God is not saying, and it's good.
Yeah.
Like, man, you're gonna get raped, and that's good.
Yeah, it's like, you could say, these strict Christian like gender roles that is the punishment in a way, right? And in abiding to that, you're serving out your punishment, which is this sin of having the fruit that you shouldn't have had.
And then for Adam, toil the soil and thistles and painful work and so on. It's like life sucks.
Life will be miserable. You're gonna be working all day. You're just gonna have like cuts on your hands all day and gonna be dirty and tired all the time, and all you're gonna eat is bread till you fucking die.
Cool.
Absolutely destroyed.
Also very interesting. Adam is already Adam, but after this episode we have, and the man called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living.
Adam was so destroyed by this whole thing, he didn't even respond. He was just like, I'm gonna call you Eve.
So my note says Eve, Hebrew, Hava, that is living or life.
Yeah. So yeah, Eve sounds like the Hebrew for life giver, resembles the word for living.
So now we think of Eve as like evening, right?
Beginning of the day.
Beginning of the Christmas Eve, whatever. But yeah, woman literally means life. I mean, she bears children, so that makes sense. Okay. And the Lord God made for Adam and for his wife coats of skins and clothed them. So no, he's like, fuck you guys, but I don't want you, like, also, ye shall surely die, but they didn't get executed.
Exactly, yeah.
God still wants his creations there's still something worthwhile about this whole enterprise. And he's like, well, so you know naked is bad, so here's some clothes and go on, do your thing.
Which is like this sort of like very, very typical like patriarchal like thing. You get a lashing, but you don't get disowned. Which is also another way of dominion, right? Like, it's also a way of still remaining dominated. It's not like, if you're a fallen angel, if you're Satan, you live in a completely different world, and you might not be completely removed from that, but it's like the sympathy. You lose these privileges because you betrayed an authority that made you, and but it will continue to, like, God continues to love Adam and Eve, or continues to like support them, or relate to them as that authority figure. I feel like that reflects a lot of our kind of typical idea of what a patriarch is.
Yeah, definitely. Authority.
God is a patriarchal figure. So deep. Wow, I've never thought of that before.
Okay. Also interesting, he says, one of the reasons why they have to leave is now that they know the difference between good and evil, they're going to desire eternal life, and they might eat from the tree of life, right? We don't want that. They shouldn't live forever. So.
Yeah. And again, it's God. Maybe God is looking after his own back here. It's like, fuck that. It's like you create something on Spawn on the PC, and then it starts crawling out the computer screen.
Okay. So he drove out. Okay. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden the cherubim and the flame of a sword, which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life.
Yes.
The cherubim.
It's like an angel, no?
Yeah, it's like sons of God sometimes called. And I remember when I read this, I was like, what the fuck is a cherubim?
Yeah.
And I remember now, it just hit me this morning when I wasn't reading the book. I just woke up and it like came to me. But
yeah,
when I went to Italy last summer, I went to a lot of like, the Vatican and all those like places. And I remember frequently the cherubim, like paintings are called cherubim, and it's those like little chubby children.
Yeah.
With the wings and such. Right?
I thought, I didn't realize. I think it's the same as the word cherub. I was familiar with cherubs before, but
well, okay. So interesting note here. In my book, it says the cherubim mostly appear as the bearers or the guards of the throne of Yahweh, thus the mercy seat. His earthly throne is guarded by 2 cherubim, and he sits between the cherubim. There were figures of cherubim on the veils of the tabernacle. I don't know what that is. And on the walls of the temple. Yahweh rides upon a cherub.
He rides upon a cherub?
Yeah, this hit me. I was, what? Yahweh rides upon a cherub.
It's crazy, man.
And the mysterious beings which were seen by Ezekiel, bearing the throne of God, are called cherubim.
Right.
So I don't know what a cherub is, but apparently God has a steed.
Okay, interesting. I really just, in terms of from a literary perspective, the idea of this flaming sword that turns every way to guard the way to the tree of life, like this floating sword that's always pointing at you, like no matter where you're like trying to walk past it.
I don't know if you've ever played any of the Dragon Quest games.
No.
Which have like
I like huge.
Shut up. Which have huge like biblical imagery.
Right.
But usually at some point you're going to heaven, you're going to see the tree of life, you're going to get a sword.
Oh, cool.
And like, yeah.
So it's blasphemous.
Anyway.
Okay, so this is the end of the story of creation and the story of Adam and Eve, right?
Wow, that took us a while.
Yeah, that took us good amount of time.
Okay, well we were gonna record more of this, but it's been 90 minutes.
Yeah.
and maybe we'll just call it here for now.
Yeah, I think we're all a bit Bibled out.
Bibled out. We will finish this, and it's been good.
Yeah.
I didn't think we would spend like 45 minutes per fucking little chapter.
Yeah, no, me neither, but I think it kind of makes sense thinking about it now.
Yeah. I mean, it's, these are like, if you think what makes a story deep is like how it's connected to other things.
Yeah.
These are like the deepest stories that we have.
Yeah, and when I was reading this, I was thinking the same thing, like, oh, this Adam and Eve section is pretty short, like,
Yeah.
how quickly we're gonna get through this. Which makes me fear a little bit for the rest of the sections, because this is literally like, I think this is chapter 4 of 50.
Well, a lot of it.
So yeah, I mean, we're basically like two-thirds through it now. 2/3 through the first section, and then, to be honest, the last section is more of a family drama, like the last half of Genesis, which is more like, I think it's maybe like chapter 12 to chapter 50.
Well, I guess just the takeaway from the fact that we talked so long about this section alone is that there's something worthwhile here to dig for,
Yeah, and I would also say is, really actually quite enjoyable to read.
Yeah.
Much more than I thought, like much more than I anticipated, and there are some really, really beautiful parts of the Bible, and like, I think for me, like, I don't know, there seems to be like there was a lot of hesitancy, I guess, on my part. Maybe not a lot of hesitancy, but a slight bit. And like, when I was like watching this audiobook, reading the audio Bible.
You were watching the audio Bible?
I was watching it because it had a rolling text thing as well. It was like the intro sequence of a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
That's where he got it from, bro. But there were so many people, like loads of people in the comments who were like, I'm a new Christian, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But like, obviously you don't need to be Christian to engage with it and to find it interesting.
Absolutely not, no.
By no means. I think more than anything, they're very interesting stories, and like, even if you just purely approached it as even if you were just to just think of it as a piece of fiction, I think it's still super interesting.
For sure, yeah. I think we're going to stay with our topic of existentialism and philosophy, I think, for most of this podcast.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to sprinkle in some of the like deep mythology every now and then. Yeah. Because everything was built on this,
And I mean, like Nietzsche and
sure,
what's he called, Sisyphus guy? They Camus. They're so related to this.
Yeah.
Right? They're the almost like the opposite side of what this book is in a way. So like, when these people are writing these books, what are they thinking about and what are they critiquing? We know that Nietzsche's read the Bible, like, and Beyond Good and Evil, which is something I really wanted to talk about this session, because I know you've read it.
I haven't read Beyond Good and Evil.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, I thought you had read it.
No,
I haven't read it. I thought you had read it. So.
I have not. No.
No, never mind. Well, I mean, even without having read it, like, we can talk about good and evil from a Nietzschean perspective.
Yeah.
And which is making me realise there's lots of other things that we could have talked about, like, in these first 5 chapters of Genesis.
Well, I think now that once we read this and we read other stuff following, we're going to like reference it back to like, oh, it's like in Genesis.
Yeah. Soy.
Okay, we need to end this.
Yeah.
Have a good night,
it's been
everyone.
A good chat. So we'll be back. Maybe we'll do Genesis next time. We'll be going from Noah's Ark, and just see where we go, basically.
Cool.
Take care, everyone. If you want to read along, by all means. And emails, bookboyspod@gmail.com if you have any questions or any recommendations or anything.
Amen.
Boys.